I was halfway through my shift at the warehouse when my buddy Jake nudged me. "Mark, your wife's here. She's in the parking lot." I wiped sweat from my brow and frowned. "Jess? What the hell is she doing here?" Jake shrugged. "Maybe she brought lunch. You're lucky. My wife never does that." But something about it didn't sit right. Jess rarely visited me at work, and it wasn't like her to bring surprises. I walked out of the warehouse to check, the blistering sun beating down on me. As I reached the parking lot, I spotted her. She was leaning against her car, our car, wearing a short, tight dress she hadn't worn in years. She didn't look like a wife waiting to surprise her husband. She looked like someone trying to impress. When she saw me, she pushed off the car and flashed a smile. "Hey babe, didn't expect me, huh? What's up? Something wrong?" I asked. Her smile faltered, and she rolled her eyes like I'd already annoyed her. "Do I need a reason to see my husband? You usually don't show up here, Jess," I said, a hint of suspicion in my voice. She sighed dramatically. "Fine. I just got back from lunch with Karen, and I was in the area. Thought I'd drop by." Karen. That woman's name was Jess's favorite cover-up when she didn't want me asking questions. I studied her for a moment. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Instead, she glanced at her phone, like she had somewhere more important to be. "You sure that's it?" I pushed. "You're not acting like yourself." "Jesus, Mark, you're paranoid." She shoved her phone into her purse. "You think I'm up to something because I decided to stop by? God forbid I try to spend a little time with you." I didn't want to fight, so I backed off. "Fine. Want to grab dinner later?" "Can't," she replied quickly. "I promised Karen we'd hit the gym tonight. You know, keep this figure in shape." She patted her hips with a smirk. I forced a smile, but unease churned in my gut. "All right, see you at home." She gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, then got in the car and sped off. But as she pulled out of the lot, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. She wasn't heading in the direction of Karen's place or the gym. She turned left, the road that led to a part of town Jess had no business being in. I tried to shake it off and get back to work, but my gut wouldn't let me. That sinking feeling, the one I ignored the first time she worked late a month ago, was back. That night, Jess got home late. Way too late for hitting the gym. When I asked her about it, she was ready. "Karen and I grabbed smoothies after working out. You know, we get to talking and lose track of time." Her voice was sweet, calm, but her story was too smooth, like it had been rehearsed. "You don't smell like the gym," I said before I could stop myself. She froze for a split second, then laughed. "Are you serious, Mark? Are you smelling me now? God, you're losing it." I bit my tongue. She walked past me into the bedroom, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. That's when I knew. My wife was lying to me, and whatever she was hiding, it wasn't innocent. I spent the next week quietly observing Jess, watching how she locked her phone the second I came near her, how she started dressing better, wearing makeup even when she claimed to be running errands. Her phone buzzed constantly at night, and she would tilt the screen away when I looked over. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, but it wasn't long before I caught her red-handed. Thursday night, I was driving home when I noticed her car parked outside a restaurant on the other side of town. Not the gym, not Karen's house. I pulled over across the street and watched. She was inside, sitting in a booth with some guy. I couldn't see his face, but I saw hers. She was smiling like she hadn't smiled at me in months, twirling her hair like she was 25 again. At one point, her hand reached across the table and touched his. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I sat there for 20 minutes, waiting for some kind of explanation to hit me. Something that didn't involve my wife betraying me. But when they stood up and walked out of the restaurant, her arm looped around his, I knew there was no other explanation. Jess was cheating on me. I tailed them as they got into separate cars. Smart move, I thought bitterly, and followed the guy. He drove to an apartment complex a few miles away. I parked outside and waited. If I had to sit there all night, I would. And that's when I saw it. Jess pulled up in her car 10 minutes later, her headlights flashing briefly as she parked. The guy stepped out of his apartment and walked to her. She opened the door, they exchanged a few words, and then he leaned in, grabbing her face to kiss her deeply. I saw red. I wanted to get out of the car, grab him by the neck, and slam his face into the pavement. But I didn't. I stayed frozen in my seat, my heart pounding like a jackhammer. When she finally drove off and the guy disappeared back inside, I sat in silence for a long time. My wife, the woman I built my life with, was sneaking around behind my back, lying to me, laughing in my face. I gripped the steering wheel, my breathing ragged. She thought she could get away with this, but I wasn't going to let her. The next morning, I couldn't even look at Jess without my blood boiling. She strolled into the kitchen like she didn't have a care in the world, humming to herself as she poured coffee. "Morning, babe. You sleep okay?" she asked sweetly.
Esther daher.
How could she act like everything was normal after what I saw? Yeah, fine. She didn't notice the edge in my voice. Or maybe she didn't care. She leaned in and kissed my cheek. "I'm going shopping with Karen today. We might grab lunch after. Don't wait up."
Karen again.
I muttered. She froze mid-sip, narrowing her eyes. "Yeah, why do you say it like that?" I shrugged. "You've been spending a lot of time with her. Just seems off." Jess set her mug down hard. "What's your problem, Mark? You've been acting weird all week. Is something going on?" The audacity of her asking me that made me want to explode. I wanted to shout, "You're cheating, Jess. I know everything." But I couldn't. Not yet. I had to play it smart. Instead, I shook my head. "Nah, just tired. Work's been tough." She watched me for a second longer, then grabbed her purse. "All right, well, don't let it stress you out. You know how you get when you're worked up." With that, she was gone, and I was left alone in the silence of the kitchen. My fists clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. I couldn't let her keep getting away with this. I needed proof. Real proof. Something I could shove in her face when the time came. I took the day off work and started digging. Jess had always been protective of her phone, so getting into it wasn't an option. Instead, I looked through the shared bills, bank statements, anything that might give me a lead. That's when I saw it. A charge for a hotel room. The date? Last Thursday, the night I caught her at the restaurant. I stared at the statement, my hands shaking. There was no excuse for this. None. My wife wasn't just meeting this guy for dinner. She was sleeping with him. The thought of her in a hotel bed with someone else, doing the things she used to do with me, made my stomach turn. By noon, I had everything I needed. The hotel receipt, her sudden late-night gym sessions, and what I witnessed with my own eyes. It was enough to confront her, but I wasn't going to stop there. I wanted her to pay. That evening, Jess came home earlier than expected. I was sitting on the couch, pretending to scroll through my phone as she walked in, her arms full of shopping bags. "Hey, babe," she chirped, setting the bags down. "Guess who found a killer sale today?" I didn't look at her. "That's nice. Okay. What's with the attitude?" She tossed her keys on the table. "Seriously, Mark, you've been weird for days." I stood up, shoving my phone in my pocket. "I need to ask you something." She rolled her eyes. "Here we go. What now? Where were you last Thursday night?" Jess froze, her smile faltering for a split second before she plastered it back on. "What?" "I told you. The gym with Karen." "No," I said calmly, stepping toward her. "You weren't at the gym, Jess." She blinked. "What are you talking about?" "I saw you," I said, my voice rising. "At the restaurant. With him. Then at the hotel." "Don't lie to me, Jess." Her face went pale. For the first time, I saw panic in her eyes. "Mark, you're not making sense." "I cut the bullshit," I shouted, slamming my hand against the wall. She jumped, visibly shaken. "I know you're cheating on me. I know everything, Jess." For a moment, she stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Then, as if a switch flipped, she scowled. "So what if I was?" Her words hit me like a freight train. "What did you just say?" "You heard me," she snapped. "So what if I was, Mark? You want to play detective? Fine. Congratulations, you caught me. Happy now?" My heart pounded in my chest. How long has this been going on? Does it matter? She shot back, crossing her arms. Honestly, Mark, I'm not even sorry. Do you want to know why? Because I'm bored with you. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Bored? Yes. You're boring, Mark. You go to work, come home, and sit on the couch like a damn zombie. You're not exciting. You don't make me feel alive anymore. So you decided to screw some random guy? I yelled. That's your solution? She smirked cruelly. He's not random. His name's Eric. And guess what? He knows how to treat a woman. He doesn't just sit around with grease on his hands, complaining about work. I clenched my fists, my entire body trembling with rage. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? Oh, give me a break, she sneered. You're not some saint, Mark. I gave up so much to be with you. You think this life is glamorous? Living paycheck to paycheck? Barely going out? I deserve better. You deserve better? I said through gritted teeth. Jess, you don't deserve shit. She laughed bitterly. That's your problem, Mark. You think being a good little husband is enough. Well, newsflash, it's not. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my keys and walked out, slamming the door behind me. I needed to cool off before I did something I'd regret. But as I sat in my truck, staring at the house I built for her, one thing became clear. Jess didn't think I was capable of standing up for myself. She thought I'd take her betrayal and keep quiet like a chump. She was wrong. I was going to make sure she regretted every single lie she ever told me. I drove around for an hour, my mind spinning like a broken carousel. Her words echoed in my head. I'm bored with you. I deserve better. Better? She had no idea what real loyalty looked like. I had sacrificed everything to keep our life steady. Worked double shifts, skipped vacations, and stayed up at night wondering how to make ends meet. And now, she was throwing it all away for some guy named Eric? Eric. The name alone made my blood boil. I needed to know exactly who I was dealing with. Jess didn't give much away, but I knew where she'd been meeting him. The hotel from Thursday night. I parked outside the hotel again that evening, watching cars come and go. My truck was a familiar friend, its rumbling engine like a steady heartbeat as I waited. I didn't even know what I was looking for, Eric, maybe, or Jess showing up again. Either way, I wasn't leaving empty-handed. Around 8 p.m., a sleek black BMW pulled into the lot. My instincts flared. Out stepped a man who looked like he walked straight out of a cologne commercial. Mid-40s, expensive suit, shiny shoes, and a swagger that screamed arrogance. That's Eric, I thought. He walked confidently into the hotel lobby, clearly knowing his way around. I waited a few minutes, then followed him inside. The receptionist barely glanced up as I walked past, my baseball cap pulled low. I found Eric in the bar, sipping a drink alone. I took a seat at a table far enough away that he wouldn't notice me, watching him like a hawk. Every sip of his drink, every smug grin he gave the waitress. This was the guy Jess risked everything for? Pathetic. I couldn't stop picturing Jess sitting there with him, smiling like she used to smile at me. It made my stomach turn. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. I wasn't going to confront him yet. Not here. Not now. Instead, I pulled out my phone and snapped a few photos of him. Clear shots of his face, his smug little smirk, and that overpriced drink he probably charged to Jess. I wasn't done yet. Back in my truck, I searched online. It didn't take long to track Eric down. Turns out, Eric Thompson was a successful real estate agent with a cookie-cutter website full of fake charm. His Instagram painted him as some ladies' man. Photos of him at expensive restaurants, fancy cars, and trips to tropical places. As I scrolled, one particular post made me freeze. It was a photo of Jess. She was standing next to Eric on a beach, wearing a swimsuit I'd never seen before. Her arm wrapped around his waist, a smile plastered across her face. The caption read, "Making memories with someone special." It was dated 3 weeks ago. My hands shook as I stared at the photo. Jess had been sneaking around behind my back for weeks. While I was busting my ass at work, she was off taking beach vacations with this asshole. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just some fling. This was a full-blown affair. and I wasn't going to let it slide. The next day, I started planning. I knew Jess wouldn't admit to anything unless she was cornered, so I needed to gather everything. Every detail, every lie she thought she got away with. I started by getting into her laptop. Jess wasn't as smart as she thought. Her passwords were always the same. Took me less than a minute to log in. Her email was a goldmine. Messages between her and Eric stretched back months. Plans to meet at hotels, dinner reservations, and even flight confirmations. One email caught my eye. Can't wait for next weekend. Mark thinks I'm visiting my sister, so we're good. Love you, babe. I read the words over and over. Love you, babe. She didn't even bother to hide it. My stomach churned as I printed the emails and stashed them in a folder. Next, I checked her shared cloud storage. Photos synced straight from her phone. I scrolled through dozens of pictures I'd never seen before. Jess smiling in fancy restaurants, selfies with Eric, and even a photo of her in bed, his arm wrapped around her bare shoulders. I had seen enough. By the time I was done, I had everything I needed. Emails, photos, receipts, and proof of her lies. Jess thought she was untouchable, that she could sneak around without consequences. She was wrong. That night, I sat in our living room, waiting for her to come home. When she finally walked through the door, tossing her keys on the table, I didn't move. "Hey, babe," she said casually, oblivious to what was coming. "Long day." I stared at her, the folder of evidence sitting beside me on the couch. "We need to talk, Jess." She glanced at me, her smile faltering. "What's wrong now? Sit down." She hesitated, her eyes darting to the folder. "Mark, you're scaring me." I said sit down. My voice was cold, steady. She lowered herself onto the armchair across from me, fidgeting nervously. "What's this about?" she asked. I picked up the folder and tossed it onto the coffee table. "Take a look." Her eyes widened as she stared at the folder like it was a ticking bomb. "What is this?" "Open it." She hesitated, then slowly reached for the folder. The second she flipped it open, the color drained from her face. Photos, emails, hotel receipts. All her dirty little secrets spilled out in front of her. "Care to explain?" I said, my voice low. Jess stammered, flipping through the pages with trembling hands. "Mark, this isn't what it looks like." I laughed bitterly. "Oh, it's exactly what it looks like, Jess. You've been screwing Eric for months, lying to my face, sneaking around behind my back. And for what? Some middle-aged real estate prick." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Mark, please. Let me explain." "Explain," I snapped, cutting her off. "What's there to explain, Jess? I know everything. You're just sorry you got caught." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. For once, she had nothing to say. "You think I'm boring? Fine." I continued, standing up. "You want excitement, Jess? You want Eric? You can have him. But you're not going to get away with this." "What does that mean?" she whispered, panic creeping into her voice. "You'll find out soon enough." I grabbed the folder, turned my back on her, and walked out. Her voice echoed behind me, pleading for me to stop, but I didn't look back. I had plans to make. Jess had shattered my trust, my marriage, and my life. Now it was my turn to destroy hers. I spent the next few days in complete silence. I didn't speak to Jess unless absolutely necessary. I'd come home from work, grab a beer, and sit in the garage, pretending to tinker with my tools while the storm inside me brewed. Jess walked around on eggshells, probably wondering if I was planning to forgive her. I wasn't. Instead, I was setting everything in motion. I'd already hired a lawyer, a shark of a guy named Kevin, who didn't just specialize in divorces but messy divorces. The kind where one side walks away completely obliterated. I handed him all the evidence I'd gathered, and he grinned like a kid on Christmas morning. "We'll hit her hard, Mark," Kevin promised. "She won't know what hit her." That was exactly what I wanted. But I wasn't stopping there. Jess thought she'd humiliated me, that she'd gotten away with her lies. But the thing about betrayal is that it's like a disease. If you don't cut it out completely, it spreads. I wasn't just going to expose her. I was going to embarrass her and her precious Eric in the process. I had my opening when Jess announced she was heading to the gym again one evening. "Oh yeah," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Mind if I tag along? I could use a workout." Her eyes widened for a split second before she covered it with a fake smile. It's kind of a girls' night thing with Karen, babe. You'd feel out of place. Right?" I said, smirking to myself. "Karen." I watched from the window as she got into her car, her gym bag slung over her shoulder. I knew exactly where she was going, Eric's apartment. I'd planted a GPS tracker under her car the night before, cheap tech, but effective. As soon as she was out of sight, I grabbed my keys and followed. The tracker led me straight to Eric's building. Her car was already parked out front. I didn't go in. Not yet. I wanted her to have a little more rope to hang herself with. Instead, I pulled out my phone and texted Karen. "Hey Karen, it's Mark. You at the gym with Jess tonight?" Karen. "Huh? No, I haven't seen Jess in weeks. Is everything okay?" That was all the confirmation I needed. I sat there for 2 hours, letting Jess get comfortable in her lover's arms, before I made my move. I called Kevin, who'd arranged for a private investigator to stop by Eric's place. The guy knocked on Eric's door, posing as someone looking for the landlord. It gave him just enough time to snap a few pictures through the slightly open door. Jess sitting on the couch in her gym clothes, her bare feet tucked under her as she laughed at something Eric said. By the time Jess got home that night, I was ready for her. She walked into the house with her usual fake enthusiasm. "Hey, babe. Gym was great tonight. You should have come." I leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. "Yeah? How's Karen doing?" She froze, her purse halfway onto the hook. Good. Why?" I smiled darkly. "Just curious. I talked to her tonight. She said she hasn't seen you in weeks." Her face went pale. For a split second, I saw the truth flash across her eyes before she tried to cover it up. "Oh, she must have misunderstood." "Cut the crap, Jess," I growled, slamming my hand on the counter. "I know exactly where you were. I know about Eric. I know about all of it." Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked like a fish gasping for air. "Mark, please, let me explain." "Explain?" I sneered, pulling my phone out of my pocket. I opened the photos the investigator had sent me and shoved the screen in her face. "Explain this, Jess. You sitting in Eric's apartment while I'm here busting my ass for you." She stumbled back, tears springing to her eyes. "Mark, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen." "Don't," I snapped, pointing a finger at her. "Don't you dare stand there and cry. You did this. You chose him. You threw everything we built away for some loser in a cheap suit." Her sobs turned desperate. "It wasn't like that. I wasn't happy, Mark. You don't know what it's like." "Oh, I know exactly what it's like," I said coldly. "I know what it's like to come home every day and see the woman I love turn into a liar. I know what it's like to work myself to the bone, only to find out my wife's been screwing another man behind my back." She collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. "Please, Mark, I made a mistake. Don't do this. Don't leave me." I laughed bitterly. "Leave you? Jess, I'm not just leaving. I'm taking everything." She looked up at me, confusion etched across her tear-streaked face. "What do you mean?" I leaned in, my voice low and cold. "You'll find out soon enough. But I'll give you a hint. Kevin's my lawyer now, and he's a hell of a lot better at cleaning up messes than you are at hiding them." Her face crumpled. "Mark, please. I'll do anything. I'll fix this. I love you." "You don't love me," I said sharply. "You love the attention, the thrill. You love yourself, Jess, and that's about it." I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. "Start packing, Jess. This house? It won't be yours for much longer." As I stepped outside, her sobs echoed behind me. But I didn't care. For the first time in weeks, I felt free. I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of chaos. For her, not for me. I had never felt so focused, so sure of every move I was making. Jess thought she could humiliate me and walk away unscathed. but I made sure that wasn't going to happen. Kevin, my lawyer, was as ruthless as I'd hoped. I had him file for divorce immediately, citing infidelity as the grounds, complete with all the evidence I'd gathered. Jess didn't stand a chance. Between the hotel receipts, the emails, and the pictures, there was no room for her to deny anything. But that wasn't all. Kevin had also dug up Eric's dirty laundry, and let me tell you, this guy wasn't as squeaky clean as his expensive suits suggested. Turned out Eric was running a shady side hustle, using his real estate business as a front to scam clients into buying investment properties that didn't exist. Kevin found victims who were willing to testify, and we quietly handed everything over to the authorities. I wanted Eric's life to crash and burn just as he'd helped destroy mine. Jess didn't see it coming. It all came to a head one Friday evening when Jess showed up at the house, technically my house, since Kevin had already drafted up paperwork proving I was entitled to everything. I'd been the sole provider for years, and she'd contributed nothing but lies and betrayal. When she walked in, she looked like a mess. Her mascara was smudged, her hair unkempt, and her once confident posture was slouched. She looked at me with red, pleading eyes. "Mark, we need to talk." I didn't look up from the stack of papers in front of me. "There's nothing left to talk about, Jess." She stepped closer, wringing her hands. "Please, I'm begging you. I made a mistake, we made mistakes, but we can fix this." I glanced up at her, calm and cold. "You made mistakes. I trusted you. You threw that trust in the trash the second you spread your legs for Eric." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "It wasn't like that." "Oh, spare me," I said, standing up. "You think I don't know what you've been doing behind my back? I saw everything. I read your emails. I know about the beach trip, the dinners, the hotels. You're not sorry, Jess. You're just sorry you got caught." Tears streamed down her face. "I was confused, Mark. He made me feel alive again. I didn't mean to hurt you. I swear." "Alive?" I scoffed. "You call sneaking around like a cheap whore feeling alive?" Her face crumpled at the word. "Mark, please don't say that. I'll do anything to fix this. I love you. You're my husband." "You loved me?" I barked out a laugh. "You loved me while you were sleeping with another man? You're pathetic, Jess. You don't even know what love is." She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing into her hands. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the lies, the sneaking around, the way she'd looked at Eric, the way she used to look at me. I grabbed the divorce papers and walked over to her. "Sign these." She looked up, her face streaked with tears. "What?" "You heard me. Sign the damn papers." I dropped them on the coffee table in front of her. "You don't deserve a single thing from me, Jess. Not the house, not the car, not my sympathy." Her hands trembled as she picked up the pen. "Mark, please." "No," I said, my voice cold and final. "You made your bed, now lie in it. Sign the papers and get out of my house." Her sobs grew louder, but she did as I said. Slowly, she scrawled her name across the bottom of the pages, sealing her fate. When she finally finished, she looked up at me one last time. "What happened to us?" "You destroyed us," I said simply. "Now get out." Jess stood, her legs shaky, and gathered her purse. She looked around the house, our house, like she was seeing it for the last time. I followed her to the door, watching as she stumbled out onto the porch. "I hope he was worth it, Jess," I said as she turned to look at me one final time. "Because you just lost everything." She didn't say a word. She just walked to her car, her sobs echoing in the night air. I watched her drive away, a hollow satisfaction settling in my chest. But I wasn't done yet. The very next morning, the news broke. Eric Thompson, Jess's perfect lover, had been arrested for fraud. Kevin had made sure the story got picked up by every local news outlet. Jess must have seen it because she called me later that day. I let it go to voicemail. "Mark, please. You don't understand. Eric's been arrested. I don't know what to do. Call me back. Please. I need you." I played the message twice, then deleted it. Jess was on her own now, and I didn't owe her a damn thing. The cherry on top, I sent screenshots of her emails and photos of her with Eric to her entire family and all her friends. I didn't include commentary, just the cold, hard truth. Let her explain her way out of that. It wasn't long before word spread. People who used to praise Jess started turning on her. Her parents were ashamed. Her friends distanced themselves. Even Karen, her supposed best friend, sent me a message. I had no idea she was like that, Mark. I'm so sorry. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Jess's life crumbled around her, piece by piece, while I watched from a distance. I moved out of the house shortly after the divorce was finalized, sold it for a good price and started fresh in a smaller place closer to work. Jess tried calling me a few more times, but I blocked her number. The last I heard, she was couch surfing at a friend's place, trying to pick up the pieces of her life. As for Eric, he's facing years in prison for fraud. Good riddance to both of them. I sat in my new living room one evening, sipping a beer and staring at the sunset through the window. For the first time in months, I felt free. Jess had tried to tear me down, but in the end, I came out on top. Some people say revenge isn't worth it, that it doesn't make you feel better. Those people are wrong. Watching Jess lose everything she took for granted was the sweetest satisfaction I'd ever tasted. And I wouldn't trade it for anything.